So I just recorded a big, long live video where I opened up an enormous present from Caleb Vila. I have all of it back here. He sent me like freaking 30 things or something insane. So I am literally just coming off of that live stream, not from 30 seconds ago. So hi to anyone who was on there, and sorry to anyone who missed it. I will try better next time to let you guys know when I'm actually going live. I know I always do that shit to you. So I'm going to actually talk about both of these together since they're so goddamn similar, and I don't feel like I want to do an entire other video for Dominion. So we're going to do The Exorcist, the beginning, and Dominion all in one. Now, this reminds me of a movie concept that I had because I have always found it to be very interesting on how a different director, a different artist can affect a product, a production, an end result. And I don't think people understand that well enough. Of course, there's people who are savvy to film and understand the filmmaking process and do get that. But a lot of people do not understand that. And I think that would be there's a really interesting idea. It might not work out the way I think it will. But I had this concept where I would like there to be a short story that is given to 9 different directors. They all get the same budget. They all get a certain amount of crew members and actors of their choosing, whatever. And they're given the same amount of time, as I said, the same amount of money, and they're to make their interpretation of this script. Rewrite it, change it, whatever they want to fit their needs, and to show them back to back 9 short 10-minute films in a row, and just see how a different interpretation from a different director can drastically change the end result of your production. I've had this idea for a long time, and I think it would be a very, very interesting study, like to be like, wow, and to see where a lot of directors kind of took the same kind of notions, and then other ones were like ran with something completely different and was just like, what? That's what they went with that? That's where they went with that? That's what they got out of that? That's the direction that they took? That's what they did with this character? It would be fascinating. You know, that's why remakes sometimes are fascinating, except for in that case, they're just trying to remake what somebody else has already done. And sometimes they're trying to do everything they can to not be like that person, or sometimes they're trying to do everything they can to do homages and everything. But at this point, if they all did it at the same time, they wouldn't have anything to work off of, so every one of them would be an original remake. You know? It'd be weird. It'd be a weird concept. Anyways, okay, moving on. So, The Exorcist, the beginning. It starts 1,500 years ago. Now, of course, I could get into the big, long discussion of the production and how they hired this director to come on and do this movie, and then they said that what he had made was pretty much unadvertisable, and that they needed something that would be better to sell to an audience, to a big audience. So they hired a new director and hired all new, like almost an entire new cast and crew, and rewrote the whole damn thing. And so you've got, and I can think of no other example where a film was essentially completed. They said no way. They changed the director. They recast almost all of it. They reshot it. They redid the script, everything. And then after that whole debacle, they released both versions because the one that they had remade didn't do very well financially. So then they tried their hand at the one that the other guy had made, doing a limited release and then throwing it on DVD. I know of no other film that has this, in its credits there. No, nothing. Nothing that I can think of. Like, I think of movies like Solo, a Star Wars story, where they remade like 70% of the movie or something. Like, they reshot like almost all of it because they just couldn't get together with what the original directors were doing. Freaking Phil Lord or Chris Miller. Is that what their names are? I can't remember. The Lego dudes. But yeah, so Ron Howard had to come back in and shoot like almost the entire movie over again. But we'll never see the Lord and Miller version. Like, ever. So imagine if they actually released that version, that would be kind of something like this. So I would be very curious. People had compared it to like Ace Ventura, what they were trying to pull off. I would be very curious on what that version would look like. So anyways, all right. So yeah, as I said, this movie starts 1500. Did I say that by that point? I don't remember. 1500 years ago, and there's this huge war, and all these dead bodies that have been flipped upside down on crosses, and they pan out in this big, epic freaking battle. And it's like, this is an Exorcist movie? Holy shit! They've really Hollywooded this thing up. But I thought it was a pretty cool opening shot, so I'm not against it. So then we moved to Cairo in 1949, post-World War II, not only like about 5 years after the war had ended, and we have a very different Father Merrin here, Father Merrin who has went through hell. He went through World War II in Holland, and he was a party to something just horrendous. Now, in The Exorcist, the beginning, this is sporadically divulged to us throughout the film. Like just little bits. Like it just shows a little more of the story, a little bit more of the story. And then in the Dominion movie, it's actually the whole opening of the film, showing us where he came from, why he's lost his faith. I prefer the Dominion version of just showing it in the opening, because the divulging it slowly throughout the film, little bit incrementally like that, I felt like it lost itself over the time, because I had pretty much surmised that by that point. Like, oh shit. Like once he's like, oh, you got to pick 10. You know where it's going from there. And so it's just lay it all out. Now, I did like how like the beginning version was a little more fucked up, because he grabs a kid and just shoots it in the head and is like, it. I just referred to a kid as an it. That's not what I meant. He grabs a kid and he shoots her in the head, sorry. And it's just such a fucking dark scene, man. Grab a child and shoot her right there in the head, and then just be like, I'm gonna kill them all. And it's a brutal sequence. In the Dominion version, he grabs a kid, threatens to shoot him, and doesn't. And it's, I don't want kids to die, obviously. But in a movie, contextually, it hits harder when something like that happens. It makes you understand more so why he lost his faith. Like, God's not here today, priest. It's a great line. It's a screwed up moment. So I prefer the Exorcist Beginnings version of events, but I like the Dominion's placement of it in the movie. So there you go. That's why I wanted to do these together. We got Stellan Skarsgård here as Father Merrin. He's essentially like an Indiana Jones in this movie when it starts. I almost said in the beginning. Then you'd be like, what do you mean? In the beginning of like the movie, or The Exorcist, the beginning, and not Dominion? No, in both of the movies. He is this Indiana Jones type character. He's an archaeologist. He's kind of wearing almost Indiana-esque clothing and such. And his attitude is following suit as well. He's lost his faith, and I don't blame him. I mean, that's one of those things, like with war. Like, how do you justify that? Like, how do you go, yeah, okay, God would let this happen. Now, I'm not going to talk religion here. That's not really the place for it, but this is a religious-based movie, and these are the questions that it poses, so how can I not kind of discuss them right now and right here? But yeah, that's something I've always struggled with as somebody who isn't religious. There's one of the reasons I'm not is because something like the Holocaust and just the devastation of something like World War II happening, and World War I and all the other wars, and just the unlimited amounts of violence and horror that goes on around the world. It's like, how do you find faith? Like, how do you think, in seeing that shit up close, like, where is the smiting? Where is God stopping it? Where is all that stuff? And then people get into free will, and I'm sure I'd probably get some comment from below from some religious nut blasting me for, this is why. And it's like, okay, that's your interpretation of things, and that's fine. Now in the Exorcist beginning version, there's the really ugly, creepy dude who's talking to Marin, and then he like absolutely sexually harasses Serra. And this is, I guess, when sexual harassment like this was pretty funny, because it would be one thing if they were buddies and pals, but she is disgusted by this man. This guy has made horrible advances to her. Now he has more of a breakdown towards the end of this movie, and I don't know where he was at with her, but she's clearly not interested. She's clearly this and that. And I get making jokes. It's fine. It's just the way that this plays out, it's like, ugh. But anyways, talking shit to your friends or girls you know is fine as long as they're in on it and they know it's good. But she is creeped out by this guy. The whole idea of a church being buried over the site where Lucifer fell from heaven and then buried underground to not be found, and like them uncovering it, and there's no weathering to the building, and it's all this. Now, I have to wonder why the building has to be so illustrious, why it has to be so, elegant and whatnot. I just, for me, can't it just be like a little brick and mortar cover with maybe a cross on it or something? Why does it have to be some big Byzantine church? Which, of course, when they said that, I was thinking of In the Mic of Madness. Or In the Mic of Madness. Ha! Slip there for my little promoting of my channel, my podcast. No, In the Mouth of Madness, when he's reading Sutter Kane's book of the Byzantine church with the gold onions on the top and whatever. So when I hear that, of course, I'm going to think that. But does it really have to be as amazing? And they said that like there's stuff in it from all these different countries. Like they had to bring them out there, and the stones had to be cut from a quarry. It was like a freaking pyramid essentially. Like people were dragging these big rocks across miles to build this thing. And it's like, did it really need all the fixings? Did it really need all the statues and everything outside, and the artwork and the freaking Sistine Chapel type freaking paintings on the ceiling? Like, did it really need that stuff? I mean, does it have to look like they spent tons and tons of money on it for it to actually hold in the evil? I don't know, but there you go. It would be amazing. I get the whole idea of archaeology. I think they sell it much different than it ends up being. I think it's a lot of like tedious ass work and then uncovering stuff. You don't just go in there and just hammer in and be like, oh, I found a bone, look. Like, it takes forever because that shit's so fragile. Once they find it, they like take a brush and they brush it a little, and they kind of blow a little air, and then they brush it a little more, and they get it out. And it is a tedious, long ass process, which you can break and destroy these freaking fossils so easily because they've turned into like rock at this point, and they're very fragile. And it's not what you think it is. But these cities that they find, like Pompeii and all this stuff, that would be just so interesting to find an entire buried building like this, or city or something. So I get the lure of archaeology, but it ain't what you think it is, unfortunately. But I've never done it, so what do I know? I'm just saying from what I've seen, it's not what I would have perceived as to be. I like that the one dude in the beginning, the guy who's showing him around, I don't know what his name is, but he talks about superstitions in the area, and he's like, "Are you?" And he's like, "I'm not superstitious." Smart. I love that, man. He's like, "I'm not going in that building," and he's like, "Don't tell me you're superstitious," and he's like, "I'm not. I'm just smart. I'm not going in there. Fuck that." That was a great line. Great line. And then Serra, we find out, was raped by Nazis, and that her husband never touched her again because of it. Now, at first, because at the end of this, we find out, in the beginning, we find out that her husband was actually the guy who was the dude who like slit his throat when Marin came to visit him. He's the guy who lost his mind. And at first I was like, wait, was she lying about the whole Nazi rape thing at that point? But no, I don't think so. He never touched her again. That was that. Like, I'm not into you anymore. What happened to you? Could you imagine, man? I don't want to ever judge someone's reaction, because they're allowed to have whatever reaction they have, I suppose. But finding out your wife was kidnapped and held prisoner by Nazis. I mean, this is 1949. She probably told him not that long ago. So you're talking within 5 years. At best, it's 5 years, even if she told him that day. 5 years ago. that the war in Germany had ended when the Germans had surrendered well before the Japanese did. They went on for a long ass time after the Germans had. But like, to think that your wife who was taken by, what the fuck do you think was going on there? I'm not saying they was raping them all, but really, like, I mean, to find out that your wife was raped by a bunch of Nazis, I don't know, man. That's rough. I get it. That's a hard one. I guess I kind of get it, but at the same time, like, that's when she needs you more than ever. Like, to divulge that kind of shit to your partner, and then for him to shun you like that, and but then you know, to think of your wife in that position, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I can't even fathom. But just listening to that, it's such a horrendous scenario. And then when she talks about it later, when she's bleeding from between the legs, and she's like, they didn't leave anything left up there to bleed. I was like, oh, God, you're killing me. That's brutal. The hyenas ripping the kid apart in the Exorcist beginning version, I thought was absolutely brutal, man. This kid is just screaming. Could you imagine being mauled by animals and just being eaten alive, torn to shreds? That's one of the worst deaths you could ever possibly imagine. So, oh, terrifying, scary. And the hyenas in this version, in the beginning, I think they're all CG, and the CG in this movie is not good. It's really bad, actually. But I want to say some of the hyenas in the Dominion are CG for sure, bad. But then they actually look like they have a couple shots of either one animatronic one and definitely one or two real ones. So it was interesting to see an actual real hyena in the original version. And that guy, the dude who ends up being her husband, carved a swastika on his chest and then slits his throat. I thought that was a really good moment. Then we have a dream fake out, which, you know, of course, I'm not a big fan of. I'm talking, of course. What I'm primarily talking about here is the beginning. And then when I compare it to Dominion, then you'll know what I will make mention that I'm paying attention, that I'm acknowledging that one. Because I actually prefer the beginning. People might think I'm a dullard for that and think that I don't like artistic movies and, you know, I like big flashy Hollywood flick. I don't give a shit what you think. I preferred the beginning. It was more interesting, more going on, more fucked up scenes, posed a lot more interesting questions to me. I just thought it was a better movie. Think what you will. I don't think many people like either, so I don't think anyone's really going to give a shit, but there you go. I like that they made the necklace that's in the original Exorcist from 1973 relevant here and where they got it and all that. Thought that was pretty cool. The chick delivering the maggot baby, that shot is actually in both movies. It's one of the only shots that is exactly the same and from the exact same edited scenes. So I thought that was interesting. Really fucked up to see a stillborn baby with maggots all over it coming out of a screaming woman. And opening up a tomb and finding this secret entrance that goes into these caves below this like screwed up church where, you know, the crosses are hung upside down and people are killed and displayed inside and all, like, terrifying. Just going down into those tunnels alone would be terrifying, but from everything that came before. Then they find a Pazuzu statue from the first film, and this would make sense to why it had such significance to the Father Merrin in the 73 version when he sees the statue and he's like, oh shit, it's happening all over again. And when he finds the little figurine head thing, it's like, oh my god, I lost this in the sand, you know, in 1949, and now it's 73. 49 to 73. So 24 years, man, he aged a lot in that time. So yeah, within 24 years, he was dead. And then he still also had to do the events of The Exorcist 2. If we're counting that, I don't know if we are. Does The Exorcist 3 count The Exorcist 2? I don't know if it does or not. I don't think it references it at all. So I guess you could fit it in there if you wanted to, because there's no mention of Reagan much at all, or Chris McNeil, or, you know, that stuff, or what Father Marin was up to. So yeah, I guess 3 doesn't take 2 out. It's not like it disregards it. Man, the Serra in this, because they're both very attractive girls. This one's a little more Hollywood pretty, I suppose. We get some serious side boob from her. Like, almost so much side boob that I have to wonder if she even has a nipple. I was like, where's the nipple, man? She's turned almost completely towards the camera. That's the most side boob I've ever seen without any areola at all. But man, if I was Marin, those tits would restore my faith. And then, so she sees the blood. So she sees the blood on the ground after she gets out. She's walking around, and then she notices it's coming from her. So I can't show you because I'm not very flexible. But yeah, I can't do it. I broke my ankle when I was 18 in a car accident. Big long story, and ever since my ankle has been fucked up, and it pools with blood. And once upon a time, I saw blood everywhere. And I was freaking out because my kids were young. They were maybe like 3 years old. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was checking every single inch of their body, looking. Then I went and got the dog, and I was looking at the dog, and I couldn't figure out what the fuck. And I was so scared, and I was so like out of my mind. And then I finally was like looking down, and there was blood all over the carpets. There was blood everywhere. And I finally looked down. I was panicked, so I wasn't really thinking straight. And I looked down, and I looked at my shoe was just like a puddle of blood was in it. And I looked at it, and I opened up my sock, and blood was literally shooting out of my foot. There's like a vein, and anytime this ever opens, it's opened a couple times, it actually like squirts like 5 feet. It's crazy how far it squirts blood. I'm grossing some people out, but it reminded me of that moment. And I remember just having this overwhelming sense of calm because I was like, oh, it's just me. I'm dying. I don't care. Like, I didn't, in that moment, it's like, oh, thank God, it's not my kids. I don't give a shit. Okay, it's me. I can die. That's okay. And the voodoo ritual in the beginning, they try to perform it, and then all their bones, like the guy's whole hand breaks backwards and, freaks out and all that. I thought that was a really cool scene. All their legs break. And the voodoo tribe and all of that, or whatever, I guess they're not a voodoo tribe, but they do seem to be doing something like voodoo in this. They're much tamer in Dominion. I feel like they're very, very small presence in Dominion, almost at all, until the very, very end. So the town seems much more pleasant in Dominion, weirdly. This one, there's just this constant looming threat of all sorts of different conflicts, whether it be from the tribe that doesn't want them there, or the British soldiers, or Marin's conflict of beliefs. And then you've got 2 different priests here that join him. One is played by the dude who plays Nolan in the Revenge series, and then James Darcy plays the same character in the beginning. I think I prefer the dude who plays Nolan better in that role. And what is this? Oh my God! Choose 10 guys. Choose 10 people in that whole situation. It's almost too much for me to even contemplate. Like I can't even sit here and think about it. It's so fucked up. Imagine being tasked with saying you have to point out all the people who have to die. That being said, this brings up one of my favorite comedic bits ever, which I think it was Bill Burr, if I remember correctly, talking about. This is a controversial topic, so hey. Of course, it's me that's going to make it, but I was in complete agreement with him on this specifically, was gender equality. And he was like, oh yeah, people want equality. Women are always asking for, oh, we want equal, this and that. And it's like, yeah, but, when a bank robbery happens and they start rounding up people and people, the negotiators call in, they're like, just let the women and kids go. No woman's like, hey, what do you mean? I'm just as killable as the man. You never hear a woman saying, okay, I won't leave. Like, I'm equal to the man. Why aren't they taking me? Like, I never have ever heard that discussion. And as he says in that, like, oh yeah, women think the Titanic movie is so fucking romantic, but to men it's a horror movie because you got to stay behind with the boat and die because women and children first. That's not equal, is it? And so in that situation, you know, when he's like, pick 10 guys, because you know that's what's going to happen. He's not going to point to some woman. He's not going to point to some kid. You know, as a woman and a kid, you're like, I'm good. That ain't equality, okay? Not that I want anyone to die. But you know if you're a guy in that situation and someone's like, you got to pick 10 dudes to die, you're looking around at every dude around you like, okay, he's probably going to go off age. Am I the oldest dude here? If I am, I'm absolutely fucked. Which, if I'm going to recommend something that plays really well into that, there's a science fiction horror movie called Circle. And it really plays into that kind of stuff. It's like 50 people in a circle and there's a death every 2 minutes. I really enjoy that movie. I've seen it a few times and it plays into that whole like older people, who should live, who should die. It's a great, great case study of the human condition. I really enjoy that movie. Anyway, all right, I got to hurry up because my freaking recording, I'm running out of battery on this damn thing and I can't charge it. All right, so he finds out there's nothing out there in the graves, which is not even a plot point in the Dominion movie, which I actually really liked this when he digs them all up and then he finds out it's a Vatican cover-up because they said it was a plague when they actually all just went missing and they never knew what happened to them. Great stuff. I really liked that. I really like the concept of this movie. The beginning. I think it's and of course the other one has a very similar concept, but I like the way this one's presented better. There's things I prefer in Dominion, for sure, as I said, the opening and whatnot. But outside of that, I like the way this one plays out better, for sure. And I don't think it's a bad movie. A lot of people talk with shit on this movie. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's great, but I think there is a lot of really interesting stuff going on in here with a church being built over this site of Lucifer's, landing spot and dealing with the loss of faith and, the ever-looming presence of civil war and of just getting over the Holocaust and having the atrocities of what are happening there. And there's so much going on in this movie. It really is a lot going on. They try to leave and there's a dust storm, so it's like nothing will let them leave. I thought that was pretty cool because it kind of answers that question. Just leave. They can't. And then they find out it's not the kids who's possessed in this. It's Serra, which I thought was cool. I thought that was an interesting spin that it's not the house that's possessed. It's your kid. It's like, oh shit. Like it's that big moment. Now in the other one in Dominion, it is this crippled kid. And then he becomes this like bald-headed freaking, he reminded me of like the main villain in the 300 movies or something. It was really stupid. I really didn't like any of that stuff, that banter, that dialogue he had back and forth with Marin, and it was just a very silly ass exchange, and it really broke the movie apart for me. I was already bored at that point, and watching these back to back were brutal because it's essentially the same movie but very different at the same time, and it just was not working for me. And I was like, I've already kind of visited this, and I liked the other version better. Maybe if I had watched them the other way around, I would have been like, oh, this is a better version, and I would have actually enjoyed watching it be done in a different way, but I didn't. And then the Civil War, or no, I guess it's not a civil war since the British aren't actually from Africa there, but whatever. So the war breaks out, and then everyone just starts killing each other. No sides. They all just like soldiers all turn on each other and start killing each other because the evil's getting into it. And the movie kind of poses the question like, is evil inherently in man, or is it influenced by something demonic like the devil? And that's an interesting question that I don't feel like they explore anywhere near enough. But the movie would have already been overlong at 2 hours here. It would have had to be like 3 hours to start getting into those questions. Her getting off the cross, CGI back, oh my god, terrible looking. Why does, when Marin put his head with her head, does it start burning her and smell? Did he like drink a bunch of holy water and then have holy sweat? We ever seen that before? Huh? There you go. You drink a ton of holy water and then you just run, or you do an exorcism. It's probably going to make you sweat. And then when it tries to touch you, it's like, oh, what is that? It's like, holy sweat, bitch. There you go. I don't know why his head burns her there, but because he has faith back, I don't know. I don't know if I brought this up in my Exorcist review. I'm being very annoyed if I didn't, so I don't remember. But when she splits her tongue here in this movie, it reminded me of Regan turning her neck backwards and spinning it all the way around. So what they do to your body, so the cuts that are on their face retain when they come out of their trance and all this stuff, but Regan would be dead. Regan would have died in the original movie. Like, maybe her possessed body would still have life in it because it's a demon and it can still move the body around and whatnot. But how is Regan still alive when the fucking thing broke her neck? It completely spun it all the way around, snapping her neck. And in this, if Serra would have lived, when she's talking at the end and she starts bleeding profusely from the back of the head there, I didn't see a forked tongue. So when it cuts the body up, like, only certain cuts retain and other ones don't. When she runs down the hallway at him, which is a really dumb looking scene, by the way. It looked like something out of an Evil Dead movie, which I love the Evil Dead movies, but it did not fit the tone of this when she's running at him. It's so stupid looking. But anyway, she like runs into this brick wall of faith or something, of God, and it like breaks all of her bones. But then she's laying there and she's like kind of moving around a little bit, and I'm like, this chick would be paralyzed. She wouldn't even get up. She wouldn't even be alive. But I guess that's why she dies. But she just starts, for some reason, bleeding out of the back of the head. I'm not honestly sure why. But yeah, in Dominion, they actually, the kid and her, they live and they're fine. And in this version, the beginning, it's much more of a sexual relationship. They're making out. She's like showing him her tits, more side boob. I'm telling you, she shows a front angle where like there's so much cleavage. You're like, where are the nipples? And then the side boob, there's no nipple. Her freaking, she has like no areola. It's just a nipple, and it's like this big. It's like microscopic. You gotta get out a fucking magnifying glass and go straight up Sherlock Holmes to find that thing. But yeah, anyways, and then she grabs the cross to prove she's not possessed. You know, he should have just leaked some of his holy sweat on her. And then yeah, his faith is restored, and then he's like, sorry, I gotta leave, and he walks away, and you kind of get almost an iconic shot. He's in his original outfit. But in the other version, it's much more of a sexless version. It's much more of a priest version of it. He comes in and he just gives her a quick kiss on the cheek, and he's in his Indiana Jones clothes still, and he just walks out the front door, and that's that. Let's see if I missed anything from Dominion really quick. I like the way the kid creepily sits up in the bed, slowly, like a Michael Myers sit-up, but it's much slower. And I know they were only given like $35,000 to finish this movie after the fact, and no like budget for a score or anything. So the film actually looks pretty good, all things considered. The face of Pazuzu that goes over the kid's face is one of the worst effects I've ever seen. That was horrible. They should never have done that. I like the jewel thieves that were killed and displayed. I'm talking about Dominion now, of course. The way that one dude's head was cut off and laid there next to the other dude, and he was hung upside down. I think that's about it. Yeah. So, the crippled kid miraculously heals. He like heals overnight. So I guess when you're possessed, your body can heal. There you go. There's your explanation. Regan's body healed because if they would have exorcised her right after she switched her neck around, then she wouldn't have a broken neck. But why didn't her face cut? You know, the cuts on her face heal up. Why? It doesn't matter. Anyway, guys, what did you think about these movies? I'm glad to be done with these because back to back was rough. It was like a 4-hour movie, like watching two movies the same. Anyways, all right. That's that for that franchise. So we'll see what happens next. Maybe I'll have another vote, or maybe I'll just go on to the next one, which was the Night of the Living Dead franchise. So we'll see. Adios.